Amen. It's a great song. It's going to be a theme song for us in this series in Ecclesiastes. So it's a good way to learn it today with a pulled back version of the band. Brent and I were talking about this before the service started. Doesn't matter how many of us are up here and how loud or whatever the music is. It's the Lord accepts our offering in the name of Jesus as it is, and all we have is Christ. And so we're grateful for that truth. And that kind of reminds me, what's that song? It's by that one artist that played that other song on that one album. It was really popular, like back then. I can't think of the name of it. How many of you have ever done that before, right? Either with a song or a movie, a book, some important piece of information. Maybe you've gotten started in a story or telling a joke and you just kind of forget the punchline and how it goes and it just falls flat, right? You just can't remember it. I wonder what it is about our memories, either individual or collectively, your family memory or just our societal memory that causes us to forget things that we once thought were just so important. Sure, age plays a part in that. As we get a little bit more gray, our memory starts to slip a little bit. And there are certainly medical conditions that, can accelerate those effects. But we also face the reality that the world just keeps turning. What was once front and center of our attention is pushed out by what's next, and then forgotten. Poet Mary Oliver sums it up this way at the end of her poem called The Orchard, with this concluding line. She says, "It's the ripeness of the apple that it's its downfall." The ripeness of the apple is its downfall. I mean, think about the tragedy and the beauty in that statement. So much time and care and work and effort goes into creating something so meaningful or fruitful in this world. A number one movie or an album or a novel or work of art, a building with great architectural significance. Maybe for you, that college or graduate degree, or if students in here, that paper that you've been working on that took a month, to just put together. Or you've had a work project that has, taken months to work on and taken a piece of your hide to bring it to fruition. And then like an apple, it ripens only to fall to the ground and decay. So our work eventually comes to nothing. And such is this life under the sun. Thank you, and welcome to Sermon 2 in the Ecclesiastes series. I hope you had a good quiet time this morning and your coffee. You're in for a joyful one this morning. Last week, we looked at the overview of Ecclesiastes. We looked at the author, most likely Solomon, or at least someone writing as though they were Solomon, the son of David, the wisest person to ever live. And he, in verse 1 of Ecclesiastes chapter 1, identifies himself as the preacher. In Hebrew, that term, that title is Koheleth, and being one of the one who gathers God's people. So Ecclesiastes comes from the word ecclesia, God's people, and the preacher is the one who gathers God's people to share with them what he has learned, these wise sayings and all that he's observed and all that he's learned. He's gathering the people to share meaning. And what he says at the beginning, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Some translations, yours might say all is meaningless. To us, in our ears, it almost sounds anti-biblical, right? The messages that we always want to hear from the Bible is how there's so much meaning is given to us in this world. But the Hebrew word for vanity or meaningless is the word hevel. It literally means smoke or vapor. Life is like that breath that you exhaled this morning as you came out on this cold morning, and there was vapor that came out, but just in a moment, you could see it and it was gone, right? That's what this word brings to mind, or like the smoke around a campfire. You can smell it. Sometimes you can even taste it. And it seems like you can even touch it. But the more you grasp for it, the quicker it disappears. It's a vain exercise to try to keep it. and to find meaning in it. And if that sounds bleak, well, that's because it is. Ecclesiastes and much of wisdom literature in the Bible is packed full of metaphor and imagery, and we're going to see that in our passage today. But the overall message of Ecclesiastes is not one that is meant to be allegorical or exaggeration like a hyperbole. I think the author is actually making a very real and grounded point in that he's asking the question, what is the point? Because that's where he's at in life. And I think to our good, he is not quick to answer the question. He's going to let it linger and ask it over and over again in many different ways to drive home this point. And that's different than what we want. We want to ask the question, what is the meaning? What is the point in all that we're doing? And we want a quick fix. We want to pop the pill, read the book, watch the TED Talk, whatever it is, flip the switch to have all of our problems solved and all of our questions answered so that we can get on with it and keep living the life that we want to live. We're like an episode you remember the show Full House? Of course, some of you remember that. It's the opening scene introduces the characters, the main issue of the episode, and up until the first commercial break, the problem is kind of building. You have some laughs and that sort of thing. And then by the second commercial break, though, the problem has accelerated. Uncle Jesse's trying to get DJ to confess to her dad about the cigarettes and under her mattress or something like that. And then the secondary story is Stephanie and Uncle Joey and maybe the next door neighbor Kimmy are trying to get home from the movie theater because they ran out of gas. Oh no! And then you get a commercial break. What's going to happen? How's it going to all wrap up? And of course, it wraps up neatly at the end of your 30-minute sitcom with pancakes and a family group hug and Michelle going, "You got it, dude." You remember that, right? But just like life, Ecclesiastes isn't that tidy, and it's not that scripted. Ecclesiastes lets the discomfort linger on and on and on, verse after verse, chapter after chapter. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to think deeply about these things. In fact, after this first statement, all is vanity, we kind of expect the punchline or the resolution, the answer. But the preacher, he's just getting started. It won't be until the end of chapter 2 that we even start to get our first glimpse behind the curtain. And between now and then, he's going to narrow the scope of his exploration of vanity. And then in the coming weeks, we're going to look at what the vanity of wisdom, the vanity of pleasure and work that's kind of kicked off today in this opening poem that we have. That's going to take a general look at the repetition and kind of the enigmatic reality of life and toil. It's going to have the same feel as the movie Groundhog Day, if you've seen that, one of my all-time favorites. And we're all Bill Murray's character, Phil Connors, trapped in the same day in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Some fans of that movie, if you know, he's reliving the same day over and over again. Every day he wakes up and the same song's on the alarm clock and he goes and lives the same thing. Some fans have speculated all that he does in those repetition of days would be something like 3 decades of repetition. Suddenly it's not so funny anymore when you think of it like that, right? He lives the same day over and over and over. All those days of sameness with no consequences, he tries all kinds of things in this maddening quest for escape and meaning. I mean, he tries all the things that you and I might think of, the good, the bad, the vice, the virtue, not knowing what's going to be the key to kind of get him out of this monotony. Life under the sun is probably a little bit more like Groundhog Day than we would like to admit. But let me read the passage for us, and we'll get into it. So starting in Ecclesiastes, I'll just start in verse 1, but read all the way through 11. Starting in verse 1, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Verse 2, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea, it's not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, And what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of the later things, yet to be among those who come after it. Well, normally you want to hear a sermon based on that passage that's going to be 3 ways that you can find satisfaction in your life, right? You want to hear how that opening illustration, the apple ripens and it actually doesn't really fall. No, it stays on the tree and somebody really enjoys it, right? Or at minimum, hey, that apple's going to fall to the tree, and or fall from the tree. It's going to, decay. But that seed, that's going to bear another tree, right? Of course. Well, this morning, the preacher has different ideas because Ecclesiastes ain't that kind of book. Okay. This morning, the preacher is going to show us actually 3 ways that life under the sun actually leaves us unsatisfied. And as long as we keep looking for meaning in life under the sun, we're going to remain in this cycle. But I'm convinced that at the end, God's going to have something more for us. So, 3 ways that life leaves us unsatisfied. First, in verses 2 through 4, life under the sun is unsatisfying because life is elusive. It's elusive. It says that what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? And that is the question that follows the big statement in Ecclesiastes, all is vanity. And I've kind of wondered from time to time, like, what's his tone when he says that? Is he real loud and angry, like, all is vanity? Or is he real sad, kind of off in the corner, like, all is vanity, all is lost. Or maybe he's just very contemplative and very stoic. Yeah, all is vanity. All is vanity. I think it probably has tones and connotations of all 3 wrapped up into one. But verse 2 is really where we get this first look at the word hevel that I mentioned, the smoke and the vapor, the brevity of life. All is vanity. It's meaningless. It's absurd. We looked at this much more in depth last week. But it's this declaration regarding the nature of life that leads the preacher then to ask the question, what does man gain from all that he toils in this life under the sun? And that question itself, under the banner of vanity, introduces 2 major themes in Ecclesiastes, toil and life under the sun. But before we get into that, it's really important to note that the word in Hebrew used for the word man is the same word used in Genesis for the name Adam. It's the same word. And the word for vanity, hevel, is the same word in Hebrew that is used for Adam's son, Abel. And we know what happened to Abel. He lasted all of 8 verses in Scripture. Here today, gone tomorrow. And you might say, oh, that's just, kind of language coincidence or something like that. But I'd argue against that line of thinking, because if there's one thing in Hebrew poetry and all of wisdom literature that it's not accidental. Whether it's the Psalms or Proverbs, Song of Solomon or Job, the structure of Hebrew poetry and the word choices are always purposeful, so that the names Adam and Abel are evoked here in these opening lines shows us that Genesis and the fall of humanity and the curse of sin is never far from the preacher's mind as he's evaluating this world that he lives in. And that brings us to the word toil. It occurs over 20 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, and it reminds us of Adam's curse in Genesis 3. It's going to be on the screen, verses 17, 18, and 19. It says, "Cursed is the ground because of you." You remember, this is what God says to Adam after he and Eve had eaten from the tree. He said, "Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your face." And that's what toil represents. By the sweat of your face you shall eat the bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return, which is what we read about in Psalm 113. It's what the idea of the generations coming and the generations going that we read at the end of Ecclesiastes, of this poem that we just read, and it's the theme of the curse in Genesis 3. And so that idea is never far from his evaluation of the life that he's living generations later after that was spoken. Now, of course, the word toil can sometimes refer to hard work, which is a good thing. And many of the good things raised in Ecclesiastes, or many of the things that he says are a problem, actually can be good things. Even like the idea of the sun. We sung about the glory of the sun. The Psalms speak of the glory of the sun. But life under the sun in this sense, and even hard work here as it relates to toil, has this negative connotation and points us back to the curse. And 10 times in the book, toil is paired with the phrase under the sun, which overall occurs 28 times. I think Doug O'Donnell is helpful here. He says, it's just like the curse in Genesis 3 that removed Adam and Eve from God's presence in the garden. This phrase, under the sun, seems to draw kind of this geographical line between God, who is in heaven, and man who lives on earth under the sun. Now, that's, of course, not to say that God doesn't dwell with us and that he's not omnipresent. We know theologically that's true, but the separation between God and man because of sin is symbolized in this distinction of life under the sun. It's just like that Steve read from Psalm 113, that God is in the heavens, right? That's that distinction of there's a separation because of God's holiness, that he is both transcendent from us, even though we know that he is near. But it's this life under the sun that the preacher is focusing on. And that has, of course, significance for us because the curse of sin, the universal curse of the sin, applies to all people, Christian and non-Christian. We all feel the brokenness of the toil, of the work, and the world under the sun. We're not blind to it. Christianity doesn't cause us to pretend it away. No, it's real, and we need to see that. So when the preacher asks this question, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? It's a curse-filled question, to which he provides this kind of metaphorical answer. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. It's as though he's saying, you think you're gaining something with all that dreaded toil? When your generation passes, look, a new one's going to come, and that one's going to pass, and another will take its place. But the dust of the earth, it's just going to keep on going. It's like building a sandcastle on the beach at low tide, right? You finished that work. How many of you done this before? You're out there with your family, or you've seen one of those like professional sandcastle builders. You know, they're out there and they get it just the way they want it. They put that picture on Instagram and they TikTok their progress and all that stuff. But you come back tomorrow, where'd it go? The sea swallowed it up. Some kid ran over it and dove into it head first, right? Generation after generation will come, and the waves of time will swallow up our work, and all will just keep on going. All the work we're doing today, while technologically different from centuries ago, we're all still laboring in the same way. There's not a lot of difference between the guy who was digging ditches in ancient Israel and the guy who digs them today, for the transportation department. He might have cooler equipment and make it a little bit easier, but he's still out there in the sun working hard, right? People are still working and laboring to improve things like transportation and communication, whether it was a carrier pigeon or the Pony Express or email or whatever it is. It's all a labor. We're all still working to improve. Merchants are still selling the latest gadgets. Advertisers are still marketing, and architects are still designing, and builders are still building, and demolition crews are still demoing, I don't know. The newest things, listen, are only relative to the age in which we live. But when viewed against the backdrop of history, the novelty fades, right? Like the sandcastle on the beach or the apple falling from the tree. And so if we're seeking meaning in our toil and expect our work to satisfy us, the preacher wants you to take a look around your life under the sun and see that the pursuit of meaning in your toil is elusive. It's elusive. Because of this, life under the sun then is unsatisfying because of the elusive nature of it. But second, life under the sun is also repetitive. Verses 5 through 10. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. And to illustrate this repetition, the author, the preacher, uses three metaphors from nature to show us what he means. All right, so first we get the sun. The sun is like the life that we feel here, the repetition of life is like the cycle of the sun. The sun rises, and just as it gets to its peak, it hustles back down to the horizon again, only to do it all again tomorrow, right? Sun rises, sun, as beautiful as it is, it just keeps going. The wind is the second one. The wind also gusts around the earth from south to north, west to east, all the circle to circle all the way around the world just to come back to where it started. And then, of course, the sea. The cycle of the water is the same. Maybe you remember that water cycle chart from like junior high earth science class. You know, that was real. You probably had to take it home and do a project about that, right? You remember all of the water, you know, comes down off the mountains and rushes into the creeks and the rivers, and all of it runs into the sea, and it's evaporated along the way. And yet, amazingly enough, the sea never fills up. It never fills up. It just evaporates back into the sky and does it all again right where it started. It's wonderful. It's certainly necessary. And I'm praising the Lord that he designed it that way. But it's repetitive. Kind of reminds me of running on a treadmill. Some of you know that I've dabbled in running a little bit here and there. And when I was living in Chicago, you would train for races. You think it's cold outside this morning? Try running in 0-degree weather. Not great. You know what's worse? Running on a treadmill. That's way worse, especially for a long time. And it's boring. You do all that work, you're not going anywhere. You're not seeing anything different. You're not looking at cool stuff outside. You're just running. Maybe you get a screen or something to look at, but it is boring. I remember one time, because it was so cold outside, I wasn't going to do that, go outside. But I remember, I'm going to challenge myself to do something different today on the treadmill. I got a race coming up, so I got to do this. I decided I was going to try to run a half marathon on a treadmill. That was dumb. That was real dumb. I did it, but to my surprise, when I finished, I was so sore. Now look, I was in pretty good shape. I had run that distance outside dozens of times. I knew what I should feel like. I felt awful when I was done with that. Well, it turns out that it's not such a good idea to run on a treadmill for that long. A treadmill has lots of advantages, but one of the negatives about your body is that when you stay in that sort of repetitive motion for that long, your running gait, your foot strike, your body motion is on constant repeat, an exact repeat. There's no variation. Your body needs to have variation in movement, even while you're running. And so you run outside, you know, you're stepping over rocks and roots or, you know, kind of dodging stuff. There's little changes in elevation that force you to change your gait, your running, your foot strike. You can change your pace a little bit easier. A treadmill allows for no such variety. The monotony is not good for your muscles and joints over a long period of time. And just like the sunrise and the sunset, the gust of the wind, the flow of water, the runner on the treadmill, we cannot escape the monotony of life. It's repetitive. It's the same old, same old. The task is never done. It just repeats itself again and again and again. And we feel this frustration all the time, don't we? You walk into the kitchen. What's in the sink? Dishes, right? You roll up your sleeves, you clean them, put them in the dishwasher, run the dishwasher, put them away, come back tomorrow. What's in the dishes? What's in the sink again? More dishes. Where do they come from, right? Laundry basket, overflowing with clothes. You throw them in the wash, dry them, you fold them, you put them away. Maybe. Maybe they just sit on your bed. I don't know. You walk into the laundry room the next day or the next week, and what's all over the floor? Not your clothes, though. Everybody else's, right? Because you put yours away, right? More dirty clothes. But it's the same with paying bills, trying to answer all those emails, mowing your lawn, scrolling through social media. It never ends. There is no end to the internet. Just like that, the laundry is never satisfied. You try to fill up your life with all kinds of things to distract yourself from that. But just like the sea, you're never going to be full. You'll never be satisfied. And the preacher knows this about himself, and he knows it about us. He concludes that all things are full of what? Weariness. Have a great day. And in verse 8, he gives us three behaviors that emphasize this, that mirror the sun, the wind, and the sea. Speech, sight, and hearing. He contends that we cannot say enough, see enough, or hear enough. We can't utter enough words to find meaning in the monotony. The eye will never be able to see it all. There's always more sights to see, experiences to take in, pictures to look at. And on one hand, that's great, right? There's so much beauty. But when we try to satisfy our sight, it will never end. And the ear has never heard it all. We can't fill our ears with all the sounds. And perhaps now more than ever, our ears are bombarded with constant input from whatever we have in them, our AirPods, our earbuds. There will always be more songs to hear, jokes to laugh at, and on the negative side, gossip to spread, right? News to consume. Nothing we can say or hear, see, or I'd even add taste or touch can ever bring meaning to that redundancy. Or as one modern poet put it, I can't get no satisfaction, right? We want a different job, a different house, a different family, a different body. We keep waiting for the change in circumstances that'll make us happy. And honestly, we live our entire lives like that. Teenagers, how many teenagers are here this morning? You might be frustrated, the lack of feeling you feel living under your parents' roof, right? I can't wait to get my own car. I don't have to wait for my mom and dad to drive me somewhere. I can't wait till I don't have to do this schoolwork anymore. That I don't have to live under these rules. I can make my own rules. Then you graduate, and you move out, and you get a job, right? I can't wait till I make more money so I can pay these bills. I can't wait to get that promotion. I can't wait to meet that one person and get married, right? Then you find someone, you get married. Then I can't wait till we have kids. I can't wait till I get a bigger house. I can't wait till we can take those kinds of vacations. And then your kids get older. I can't wait till they move out. I can't wait till I retire. Then what? Well, then the cycle never ends. The only thing that changes is what we think will satisfy us, right? But the preacher concludes, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has already been done in the ages before us. His conclusion about the repetition of life is that there is nothing new under the sun, which is possibly the most famous one-liner from the whole book of Ecclesiastes. And how can that be true, though? Perhaps the French writer Jean-Baptiste Carr said it best when he wrote, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Or, I like it a little bit better, the way that Shirley Massey sang it, the word is about, there's something evolving. Whatever may come, the world keeps revolving. They say the next big thing is here. The revolution's near. But to me, it seems quite clear that it's all just a little bit of history repeating. You know that song, right? Life is unsatisfying because it's repetitive. Life under the sun is that way. So life under the sun is elusive. Life under the sun is repetitive and therefore unsatisfying. But lastly, whether those two things are true or not, we also know that it ends. Life under the sun can be unsatisfying because it's going to end. And in verse 11, he says, there is no remembrance of the former things, nor will there be any remembrance of the latter things yet to be among those who come after. And so even if life wasn't elusive or repetitive, it still ends. And ultimately, our work won't be remembered. Like what we said last week, in 100 years, all new people, right? Nothing new, nothing remembered. And while every generation may remember the work of David or Isaiah or the Apostle Paul, or even outside of biblical world, Aristotle, Shakespeare, Mozart, how will other famous people fare? What about Babe Ruth or Jackie Robinson or Elvis Presley? How will they be remembered a century from now? How about Michael Jordan? I mean, can you believe that there are people alive today who think LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan? Come on, right? Some of you heard me tell this story before, but one time when I was working as a butcher in Louisville while I was in seminary, that was kind of my day job, I was doing a cutting demonstration, and I was working out in the middle of the store. We had a table set up, and I was cutting whole ribeyes for customer specifications. So if you wanted two, probably like 1.5 inch thick ribeyes, I'd cut it for you right in front of you. We'd have a good conversation, and I'd send you on your way. Well, it was a Saturday afternoon. There was a lull in the store, and it was a pretty small market. And so I could easily see the front door and kind of the whole store from where I was at. And about midday, I was kind of cleaning up, wasn't really helping anybody at that point. There was hardly a customer in the store. A husband and wife walked in, and the woman was wearing a bright yellow Live Strong Nike Total outfit. If you remember the Lance Armstrong Live Strong movement, that everybody wore the yellow bracelets and all that stuff before, so she had that whole outfit on, and so she was impossible to miss, right? She looked like a yellow highlighter running around the store. But her husband came in, and he was walking on the grocery cart, and he was wearing a black Adidas tracksuit, had on sunglasses, and he was pretty tall. And so because of his height, he was hard to miss. But they came in totally unnoticed, except for the yellow. And as I was standing there, I was kind of looking, and I was like, he got a little closer and a little closer. I was like, wait a minute. I recognize this guy. Is that who I think? No way, that cannot be. But sure enough, it was. Now, you may not know this, but Louisville is the home to the greatest, the champ, the bad man, Cassius Clay. That's right, better known as Muhammad Ali, was front and center walking through my store while I was cutting meat. I could not believe it. I don't get starstruck a lot, but in that moment, I don't know what else was going on around me. I was zeroed. I mean, if you made a Mount Rushmore of the greatest athletes, maybe in the history of the world, but certainly in American history, most popular of all time, he's probably going to be on it, right? If you remember in Atlanta, he's the one that lit the torch in the Atlanta Olympics back in 1996. So there's nobody around. I was soaking it in. But it didn't take long that I was reminded that he was deep in the throes of Parkinson's disease. And that punch that was so strong that could knock anybody out was now just as shaky as could be. And he wasn't pushing that grocery cart, or as we call it down here, the buggy. He wasn't pushing that to be a help to his wife. It was the grocery cart that was helping him make his way around the store so that he wouldn't fall. And eventually, people did start to recognize him, and she escorted him back out to the car where he sat alone while she finished shopping. Now, I don't tell that story to shame the champ, right? I tell that to say, though, the end comes for all of us. Just like we sang in 10,000 Reasons, on that day when my strength is failing, it's going to happen. Even the ones who we perceive can't be beat. And more than that, history comes for all of us, and for some quicker than others. Even those who have streets and buildings named after them. There is no remembrance of the former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things yet to come, of those who come after them. One of the greatest blessings of Ecclesiastes is that it forces us to face that sobering reality. It forces that question to linger in front of us. In a world where the number one ambition of teenagers today is to be famous, we must be reminded that today's celebrities are tomorrow's obituaries. And the hourglass of human history is turned over, and all of our accomplishments are slowly buried in the sands of time. And people try to deal with this reality all the time. We try to escape it. We try to numb it. We can stoically or philosophically embrace it and take the life of the nihilist that nothing matters, or we dive headfirst into our lust. We eat, drink, and be merry like the hedonist, for tomorrow we die. But as those who are listening to this in a church, presumably because we believe or at least are curious about what God might say about this, we need to realize that God is exposing all of these realities for us through his servant, the preacher. He's allowing the preacher to experience all of these realities and on a gut level expose them for himself and for us. And we need to realize that God put this in his Bible on purpose, and that we need to know that God realizes and knows all of this. And it's God's word that shows us the circular, maddening, monotonous, elusive nature of our existence. And he's the one who opens our eyes to this reality, and he calls us not for us to deal with this, but for us to allow him to deal with this. And deal with it, he has. We'll look more closely at this in the coming weeks. how our work and toil, though it's elusive and repetitive, is actually not worthless. It has great meaning and value and enjoyment for us in this life. But why? Why? Well, it's because Jesus' work was not worthless. When it seems like our work and our life might not matter, we must find our meaning by seeing that Jesus' life and his work ultimately mattered. Our work, while nothing new, nothing remembered, it was Jesus' work that was new and still works, is at work to make all things, including you and me, new and remembered. Because God said, I will remember you. Therefore, the work that we do as enabled by and through the work of Christ also matters. Doug O'Donnell put it this way: life under the sun is brief and bleak, but life through the sun that leads us to life above the sun is eternal and joyful. And I love what Danny Aiken says here of seeing the gospel at work. The reign of death is strong, right? It claimed Adam. It claimed Abel. It claimed David and Solomon. And one day it will claim all of us. But in a world full of grave plots, there is one grave that is empty. And there is one man whom the dust cannot claim because God would not allow him to see decay. Jesus is free from the curse in Genesis. He graciously offers that freedom and ultimately that meaning and purpose to you, to each one of us. And it is the ripeness of that apple of all of us that is our downfall. But Jesus said of himself in John chapter 12, verse 23 and 26, and Jesus answered them, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth, unless the apple falls from the tree and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loses his life, whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor or remember him. You see, Jesus is that seed that fell from the tree, that was buried in the ground, and has sprung up to bear much fruit. Unlike all of our work, Jesus' work is different. His life was not the ripeness of his life was not his downfall, but it was his victory. And in him is our victory. In him we find meaning. And we can lose our life for a lot of things in this world, in this life under the sun. But if we commit to follow him, our gain is not found under the sun, but above it and through the sun, the S-O-N, where we gain eternal life. And where he is, so shall we be also. Let's pray.